So,
Hmm.
what are we going to talk about today? I know it's something quite tender, it's quite deep, and we
It
could talk about
is.
it
It
for a
is.
long time. There's a lot there.
I know. I might cry. I'm a crier. It was inspired by um, a prayer circle I am part of elders from different traditions. And that should right now, different traditions, different tribes, different ways, right? Diversity. Coming together to pray for humanity, to pray for the world, to pray for all of life on this planet. And we get together monthly. And one of the prayers that one of the elders prayed was very powerful. And so I wanted to bring it here and bring this topic. And they prayed that during this time of crisis that humans are experiencing, their prayer was that as people are seeking solutions and help and guidance, that those people who are in leaderships, whether they be it teachers, in this case it was teachers and healers, that those people seeking allow us our humanity.
Mm,
And I think it's just such a powerful prayer, right? Because humans have a tendency of building pedestals, and the Western world specifically, because it's trying to disempower you and put the power into the hands of few. And so when people from who grew up in the West come into indigenous circles, you're wanting that teacher to be your father, brother, mother, grandmother, best friend since you were, 2 years old, your healer, your teacher, your shaman, your medicine maker. You're expecting one person to be a village, right? And you're expecting that one person to not be human. And as I tell all my students at the beginning of any circle, to err is to be human. Humans learn by making mistakes. And so I hope that you allow me my humanity as we go on this journey together. And I think it's just so important because when we are feeling stressed, and part of that feels like a time crunch, and we're feeling scarcity, right? We want to go to one place to get everything, right? Even our drinks now. You go into a store these days and you can buy one tea that has A, B, C, all your vitamins, your magnesium. Like we're trying to load everything into one moment
mm,
because we don't have time for community. Yet we crave community. And remember, it takes a village of individuals to be in community, each in their individuality, in their role, in their experience to heal, right? To heal together. And there is no one way, there is no one truth, there's no one savior. And I'm saying that because humans keep looking for, as another elder would say, the lazy way. The lazy way is the one way, right? The quick way. All my vitamins, all my minerals, all my relationships, all the needs of my father, my mother, my everyone in one way, one person. And we're put on this planet, on a diverse planet, to learn diversity, to sit with elders as being all kinds, even outside of humanity. And yet, we're not allowing our human brethren to be human.
mm. Yeah, thanks for sharing this. It's something like you that I've experienced a lot. And it's interesting because there is this tension between vulnerability that is required to teach, to put ourselves in the place of the students, to be in the place of question, not a place of answers. And at the same time, if we do not allow someone to be human, there's no vulnerability possible. Is there our expectation? very often unsaid expectation, by the way, about the role of a teacher or healer. And it can be very complex to navigate, because I think once people, that's why I really hate titles. uh, because we are this to one person and we're this to someone else. So, what am I? I'm none of that, and I'm everything, right? We can play and shift roles. But I think it's really important to allow that, because if not, we'll keep jumping from one person to another, because everybody has flows. And we are going to meet sooner or later, meet one of the flows of that person. But if we don't take that as an opportunity for healing together, for understanding what is happening, for seeing our own reflection is what is happening in the others, by the way, because I'm pretty sure if you witness anger, if you witness something in someone, it's something you carry too, right? We all carry anger. And can we be more compassionate in that moment? Can we allow each other's to be confused, to be annoying, to be in a bad mood, but not just to be wishy-washy and pretending, that we are navigating life from that perspective. I think for me also, responsibility, radical responsibility, come hand in hand with vulnerability. My teachers, they're not perfect people. They are humans, and I allow them to be that. And sometimes, allow them to be that sometimes for extended period of time, whatever they are going through. But I think it's important also to embody radical responsibility, to say which part we're playing in what is happening. Because if we put someone on a pedestal, if we have unset expectation, or if we have a Western narrative about what a teacher is, what a healer is, not an indigenous perspective of it, then we are going to have expectations that are not going to be met, because there's something very different that happens when we connect from this humanity level. And there are a lot of projection today in the world and expectation. Either it's towards healers and teachers and whoever they are, or politicians and leader of any kind out there. Now we could question, are those leaders supposed to be leaders with the flows they are carrying? And that's another, big question indeed. And I want also to say, it's flows with vulnerability. It's different than flows where I don't acknowledge any of it, which is an ego perspective, right? But it's really important that we find the softer way, that we step back sometime and take time and say, okay, yeah, this person was having a bad time or a bad day, but defining someone through an emotion that they're carrying, or a pain that they carry, very often related to that emotion, is quite violent. It's quite violent, in fact, to define someone, to put them in a case forever moving forward, because maybe they said something that we didn't like, or maybe that day, I don't know, they're very really in a bad mood. I think we need to allow each other not only to be human, but also to be diverse, like the moon cycle, like changing every day. The moon is just the full moon or new moon. Every day she is different and shifting. So we need to be careful once we have decided that someone is that, the consequence it has. Because ultimately, we're here for the healing of all. We're here for the good of all. And we need to allow, especially those who are in pain, which often show up as they are maybe very angry that day, or maybe they are carrying, a very difficult narrative, to not just see the narrative, to not put them in that box forever, but to see the pain that is behind it. And that pain needs empathy. That pain needs compassion. That pain needs communication, understanding. It needs vulnerability. And it needs to, once again, to acknowledge that this is ever changing. As the seasons are changing, as the sun, change position in the sky constantly, we as human beings not only are constantly changing, but we need to allow each other to change. And we need to welcome the season of each humans. We need to welcome the phase of each humans, because that's a reflection also of our capacity to welcome our own inner struggle, our own inner pain whenever it shows up, to have more compassion for it, allowing us to be human and be human together.
Yeah. I have a quick story that I want to share, but I wanted to, as you're talking about this radical responsibility, right? It's the radical responsibility we each have, right, to be aware of our perception. And it's so important to remember that confirmation bias is real. And if you're coming from a Western perspective and you are struggling in an Indigenous structure, you will go to your Western perspective that will always confirm your bias towards Indigenous ways, right? It will always, the Western world has always sought to colonize the Indigenous. If it doesn't make sense, right? It's because you're still in that space. It's just a program. It's not good. It's not bad. It's just a program. And so when people feel that tension, you're going to go into back into any value system or anyone who confirms that how you're feeling is the way that you should be feeling. Indigenous ways, right? We're human, we have confirmation bias, but it comes from a very different way, right? And our confirmation bias is actually question because we're told to be the question, not the answer at all times. At all times. At all times, we never think we're right or the only way. At all times, especially if you get deep, deep, deep on your path, right? You're actually asking, the further you go along, is to be criticized more by any being on this planet to give you feedback, right? Very different. But I wanted to, with that confirmation bias, tell you this little story. I just ran into it's funny that I use the word ran into because it's literally is a story. This gentleman, he's a Blackfoot, and I hadn't seen him in a while. So I saw him. I said, "Brother, how are you?" And he's like, "Good," and he was limping more than I was limping. And he said, "Yeah, I got T-boned. I got, you know, my femur, snapped in half." He was telling me of this crazy accident that he had. And I said, "Oh, I'm so sorry." And also just trying to be like, was it, whose fault was it, right? And he said, "Marita, accidents happen." And I was like, okay, that was his response, right? He's like, "I'm just glad that I'm back at work and that I'm not going to lose my house and I'm still dealing with this teaching." And he called it a teaching. He's like, "I'm glad that I received this lesson in my life. I'm done with it." With that part of it, I'm not going to have to go back and recreate that for myself. But he didn't look at the accident as, why me? Why did this happen to me? And who do I get to blame? He looked at it. We live in a volatile world where accidents happen. Humans are human. Things happen. And they're lessons. Who am I going to be in this lesson? And he said, I have gotten to learn how to be in this lesson.
Mm.
Despite my fears of losing my house and not being able to provide for my family, I've had to sit with that as part of the lesson. And I walked out of there being like, wow, thank you for that.
Mm.
Thank you so much for sharing with me your story, because how he shared it was his life as a lesson, living in a volatile world, which he is okay with, accepting that we're humans in a very stressful time and knowing his part of it, not blaming anyone, and just saying, okay, thank you, life, for this lesson. I'm ready to move on and to not repeat that.
Mm.
And I think that's such an embodied way, and really teaches you the difference between the Western way of when humans are humans and accidents happen and the bias confirmation that happens versus this is just life on this planet. It's neither good, it's neither bad. I'm going to have success. I'm going to fail. I'm going to have connection, and I'm going to have disconnection. But I know that connection is what I'm going for.
Mm.
At any point that I try to disconnect, I am responsible for that. When I blame, I'm disconnecting. When I don't accept the tension of not being able to provide for my family and blame someone else, I am disconnecting myself from my needs, my desires, and my anxiety, and treating it as something that is not mine to mother and to love and to tend to. Instead, I displace it on someone else. So I'd like to thank that individual for teaching me that this week.
Beautiful, powerful. Thank you, Marita.
Thank you, Angel.